I always like to say the American mission is bringing out the best in each other.
Yeah.
And that really is about being optimistic about our society, about our democracy. And in a democracy where everyone's free to be their best,
Right.
you're unleashing all sorts of talent and ideas. And that has always been the secret to our success. And that's really an optimism. It's optimistic to believe that everybody's got something to contribute. And that's really the idea that the country was founded on.
You're listening to a very, very special episode of Granite Goodness, the show about optimism, progress, and problem solving in and around New Hampshire. My name is Andy DeMeo, and today I will be talking to Senator Maggie Hassan. She is a former governor of New Hampshire and currently represents the Granite State in the United States Senate. We talk about New Hampshire's reputation in Washington and across the world, our family's shared history of military service, why America is a country built on optimism, and many other things on this episode of Granite Goodness. I hope you enjoy it. Senator Maggie Hassan.
Nice to meet you.
Welcome to Granite Goodness.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for taking the time. This is an extraordinary honor for me. Crazy to be here. I'm a big fan of you. I'm a constituent. I voted for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
There's so much I want to talk to you about, but in the time we have, you have such an opportunity with the bully pulpit. You're a high profile person. Like, why come and talk about optimism in and around New Hampshire with me?
Well, because the way we move forward in this country has always been to work together and think about a better future. I always like to say the American mission is bringing out the best in each other.
Yeah.
And that really is about being optimistic about our society, about our democracy. And in a democracy where everyone's free to be their best,
Right.
You're unleashing all sorts of talent and ideas, and that has always been the secret to our success. And that's really an optimism. It's optimistic to believe that everybody's got something to contribute, and that's really the idea that the country was founded on.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's I talked to Congresswoman Goodlander last weekend, and she said something very similar. She was like, America, like it's a nation built on optimism.
Yeah.
Like it's the whole concept of it, right?
Right.
Part of what I'm trying to do with this is like get away from it as a kind of a fluffy feel-good thing. You know, like I want to kind of reclaim the word optimism as it can be pragmatic. It can inspire us to do and get interested in hard things, right? And that I feel like it's embedded in the nature of political conversation a lot of the time, but people, they have a weird relationship with politics and with the government, you know, and, everyone loves public servants, everyone hates politicians, and there's a lot of cynicism out there. So like, what do you say to people when they say, I don't trust any of these people. I don't feel connected to the government. I feel so cynical about my ability to impact the system. Like, how do you approach that?
Well, first of all, I am just blessed to represent the state of New Hampshire, which, as you know, has just incredibly engaged citizens. And I don't mean that that's because everybody follows politics minute by minute.
Right.
It's about this sense that you see a challenge in New Hampshire, you see a problem, an unmet need, and you roll up your sleeves and you say, gee, I can do something about that.
Yes.
And you don't wait for other people to do it. And that to me is what is special about New Hampshire. Everybody is serving in their way. And I see my service in the Senate, my service as governor and in the state Senate as an outgrowth of that. That is the inspiration for me. Follow the model of the people of New Hampshire.
Right.
So I think it's really important when I talk to people about service, I say, look, Granite Staters come together and work to make the community, the state, the country better. That's what we aim to do in Congress too,
Right.
although I understand that a lot of people may not feel that way.
Yeah.
I am lucky. My dad had a career in both teaching and public service, and he really instilled in me, as did my mom, who volunteered for the League of Women Voters,
Right.
or the local nursery school, and then ended up pursuing a teaching career of her own. But at the end of the day, they both instilled in me that the most honorable thing you could do fortunate enough to live in a democracy was
Yes.
to serve in some way, and
Right.
in this particular way, they really instilled on me, bring your values to the job, bring the values you represent. And in New Hampshire, people tell you what they care about, what their priorities are, what they're
Right.
worried about, and really are very open and transparent with you. And that allows you to serve, I think, as effectively as you can. I do think what I would say to people who are cynical is being skeptical about politics, about people in politics, is healthy.
Right.
Skepticism is a healthy instinct.
It's very American.
Yeah. You say you're going to do that. Prove to me you're going to do that.
Right.
That's healthy and fair. Cynicism is really problematic, because what people who promote cynicism are doing is they're giving people an excuse not to engage,
Yes.
not to be part of the democracy, and just give up on it. And so, if you're feeling cynical, I'd urge you to come visit
Yeah,
with
get
us.
involved,
Come to a constituent coffee that I do.
Yeah.
Reach out to my staff. Come to a round table. And talk. Because in New Hampshire, the other great thing about this job is I run into people all the time, and we just talk.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it happens. I mean, not only like the fact that we're talking right now even is a great indicator of like our leaders are so accessible, right? I ran into Congresswoman Goodlander by accident.
Yeah.
I was doing a thing in Keene at the Hannah Grimes Entrepreneurship Center, and she happened to be there that day, and it was like, the woman who runs that center, great, person.
She's terrific.
Yeah, Julianne Dodson,
yeah.
she's amazing. And so I joked to her, I was like, wait, a congressperson's going to be here? Like, could I sneeze in front of her or something? Like, could we arrange I could trip in front of her? And she was like, why don't I just introduce you like a normal person?
Right.
She'd be happy to meet you. And, and it's a very Granite Stater thing.
Yeah.
And one of the other kind of like burning questions I have for you in that respect, you've served at the highest levels of government, for a lot of your life. What do people in D.C. and around the country think of New Hampshire?
First of all, most of them know that our state motto is "Live Free or Die."
That's good.
Yeah, and even
should know.
beyond New Hampshire, by the way. So I was meeting with a whole series of ambassadors from European countries. A lot of senators were. It was right after the invasion of Ukraine began,
Yeah.
and so we were all meeting, and I introduced myself to each of them as one of the senators from New Hampshire, and to an ambassador, they all said, "Oh, live free or die," right? So
Oh my
that was
God.
very cool.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people know that. They believe that we stand for freedom and direct engagement. They know that we are a very engaged, very small d democratic state government.
Yeah.
They know about the First in the Nation primary, which is, of course, a reflection of the way we think about government and representation. And lastly, I think they know that we are a really small state that punches way above its weight.
Yes.
Yeah.
See, that's I find myself saying that all the time.
Yeah.
A lot of people talk down to New Hampshire. Like I'm kind of used to that. People call it the armpit of New England. They call it the South of the North, and not in a flattering way, and like I know why people say those things, but there's so much here that's just amazing and really, really unique. And I just, I want to be an unabashed, proud champion of, our values and all the things that are unique. And I'll share a story with you that I think you'll appreciate. I don't think I've ever shared this on the show. So I was with a group of people once. I won't say when or where to, save this person's privacy, but we were all sitting in a circle or a group, and we were going around saying, what do we love about, New Hampshire?
Yeah.
Right. And, all the people, most of them were kind of like me, fair-skinned, lived here a long time, probably have 2 generations removed immigrant ancestors. And we all went around and said, oh, yeah, I love the mountains. I love, the accessibility to these things. It's centrally located. And then, one person in the group, an older woman who had immigrated from China a couple of years ago, she said, I like the freedom. I like the freedom.
Yeah.
And no one else had said that, and it was one of those moments where I was like, that never would have occurred to me, to say, because this is all I know. And so I like that you point out, like, yes, we have flaws as a nation.
Yeah.
Yes, we have flaws as a state, but I don't know. I would take being alive here over pretty much any other time and place, right?
Yeah. No, look, I think the blessing of being able to take freedom for granted, which is really
Exactly.
what you're talking about, is something that you feel palpably when you travel. One of the great privileges of the Senate job is that we can travel around the world. We usually do it in bipartisan groups, which is very healthy in terms of, reminding each other as senators from different political parties that we share this value. But the other thing that you really learn is we may take our freedoms and our democracy for granted in America and in New Hampshire, but around the rest of the world, they don't always have that privilege, and we really represent to them this beacon of hope. And now I have to say right now, we've got some challenging times, and I don't want to be pessimistic about it, because I think we have the capacity as Americans and as Granite Staters to dig down deep and remember our roots and think about the examples of times in our country when we have been proud, times in our state when we have bridged that partisanship and reminded each other we love each other as Americans. We don't have to like each other. We won't always agree. Part of our freedom is that we get to disagree, and we can do it passionately. But at the end of the day, the very structure of our government, the structure that says everybody gets a say, means that we all do actually have to work together, because everybody in the Senate gets a vote. Everybody in the House gets a vote. So if you really want long-lasting and creative solutions, you're going to work, we say it now, across party lines, but it's really about saying to people with different life experiences and different perspectives, what do you think? What's your idea? How do we address this? And to me, that has been the secret of our success. And when you threaten, the reason I am pretty passionate, especially right now, about protecting the foundations of the democracy, the rule of law, the separation of power, that, the ability to speak up and gather
Civics
with whoever
101.
you want. The reason is that without that foundation, then the bipartisanship begins to crumble. Then the sense that we all have a stake here and we all have a say, and we're going to have to find out a way to work together and move forward, that gets undermined. And so, as long as the democracy persists, then this capacity to share perspectives and ideas and come up with great, unique solutions is always going to be there for us.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and it's fun to remember and to remark upon, like, democracy is an invention, like it's a great innovation to process information to the people who can help solve the problems, right? Like it's far more efficient in many ways to be like, hey, what's going on in your life, instead of just being like, all right, some king person, they think they have all the information, but they probably don't a lot of the time. And, a lot of the people in less free countries around the world, like there's all these questions about, okay, who's telling them what? Are they surrounded by sycophants? And like, we have to make all these calculations and inferences to really try and understand like what's happening in other countries, because they're just not as open as the United States, right?
No, and I think, that's the other thing to be passionate about right now. And of course, with the rise in technology, there are some real challenges figuring out what's truthful information, what's not. But we as a people have the power to self-correct, to engage with somebody else and say, where'd you hear that, for heaven's sakes? Or, gee, I think you're wrong about that. We have the capacity and the power. And it's also a very New Hampshire thing. I always say to, some of my colleagues will say, well, I can't meet with all these people because the state's too big, and I haven't had a chance to really sit down with this group. I'm like, if you go grocery shopping in New Hampshire and you do what I do for a living, people are going to, so people will, on the one hand, respect your privacy. On the other hand, they will also come up to you and say, so I have this thing. Can you talk to me about it now? If you can't, that's okay. But how do I reach your office? But that sense of direct engagement with your leaders and not seeing us as special or unreachable people or something, not seeing us as celebrities, but seeing us as neighbors. That's the core of what it is to be from New Hampshire.
No, I there's so much to like about that, and again, it's one of these examples. I mean, there's all this proud history. Like we got the flag over there, 9th to ratify the Constitution, right?
Right.
And, like I like to celebrate, these traditional American ideals, especially being a New Hampshireite, because they're very new, like they're values that I think we do particularly well, right?
Yeah.
And, again, to talk about history, this is a thing I find myself thinking and saying often, right? Of like, yep, the world's flawed. We have big problems today, right? But there's something really profoundly special about like everyday America. Like if you were to explain the concept of modern America to a Roman equestrian or a Roman senator, right? Like they would be very confused.
Yeah.
They might recognize the architecture of a republic, but to say there's going to be this place where on paper, anyone can go and live there. Anyone can worship whoever they want. They can have whatever spiritual beliefs they want. They can, now love whoever they want, hopefully more and more. They can live their life as they see fit. They can go into whatever profession they want. They can say whatever they want, anytime, anywhere, forever, all the time. And they have the right to bear arms. And that most of the time they exist peacefully with each other. Like, like you just go to Americans, they're like, hey, let's barbecue, right? Like that's how regular American people are. And it's pretty remarkable in the course of human history when you put all that together, right?
It sure is.
It's worth celebrating.
Yeah. Oh, look, it is remarkable in the course of human history. And that's one of the things I always try to say to people. It's remarkable, which also means we have a special obligation to keep it going.
Right.
And it doesn't sustain on its own. And that's where, I just came from Boscawen, the veteran cemetery, which if people haven't gone to, I always say the Boscawen Veteran Cemetery in New Hampshire, it's the heart of the state.
Right.
Go there. You will learn so much about our history, about the people who sacrificed everything for us and for our freedom and for the capacity to live everyday lives, right? And so we are having this conversation on May 30th, which is the traditional Memorial Day, and we just came back from the ceremony there. And one of the things I was talking about is the greatest generation. My father was a member of that generation. He was a World War II veteran. He fought for all of the things you just said.
Yeah.
But it was a fight.
Right.
Private Raymond Cole of Andover, New Hampshire, was a special ranger who scaled the cliffs of Pont de Hoc and was killed right after he got on the top. Only 50 of the 200 special rangers that day in that particular battle on that cliff, only 50 out of 200 survived.
Oh my God.
But they kept the Germans from mowing even more people down, and they allowed the invasion on D-Day to continue.
Wow. And
they did it to liberate a people and the world from Hitler.
Yeah.
And decades later, I'm there visiting as a United States Senator.
Right.
And I mentioned to a French policewoman that my dad, I thanked her for helping us with something. And I mentioned to her that my dad fought in World War II. And she just stopped everything. She got teary-eyed and she said, my family owes your father and all Americans our freedom.
Right.
And that's just really, those moments remind us of how special this experiment with democracy is, and how it's really worth keeping.
When you're a kid, you kind of hear these platitudes of like, do this for your country, serve your country. And now I'm a little older, I have perspective for how, unique, remarkable, and, great as a controversial thing it is to say in this moment, the United States is, right? And you think of all the people who have sacrificed, who've given their lives, who've given their time, their careers to public service, right? My grandfather, Paul Mario De Meo, the descendant of Italian immigrants, to New England from 100 years ago. He was drafted at age 18, sent over to France, fought in the Battle of the Bulge. I believe he saved a guy's life and, won some award for it. And I can't even fathom what that was like. My life's been great.
Yeah. My dad was Battle of the Bulge too.
No kidding.
And he had survived the Great Depression and the Bulge. I never heard him complain about anything except cold weather, which if you have been to the site of the Battle of the Bulge in Belgium in December, you begin to understand.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we know something about that as New Hampshireites.
Yeah.
All right. Tell me simply, are you an optimist? I know you're going to say yes. But
No, I am.
Why?
Because I have seen and felt viscerally the impact of a democracy on my life, on my family's life, both, my nuclear family now and historically, and because I believe people, generally speaking, act out of good faith and want to do the right thing and are excited about the prospect of, again, seeing the potential of people all around them and understanding how that strengthens all of us. I get to name a Granite Stater of the month every
that's pretty cool.
month.
Yeah.
And we find, a 6-year-old who's cleaning up parks during COVID and getting his friends and neighbors to help, teenagers doing free coding classes to middle schoolers, people setting up food pantries when they see a need. This month is a woman who works up at the Dartmouth Cancer Center and realized that a lot of the patients getting cancer treatment were food insecure, and set up a whole program for getting them healthy food in a way that didn't make them feel stigmatized, right? So I get to see those examples of people doing great things all the time.
Yeah.
And then I'm reminded, I think probably a lot of people listening to this podcast know that my husband Tom and I have 2 wonderful adult children. Ben, who's 36, has very severe cerebral palsy.
Yeah.
It wasn't until Ben was born and we began to navigate how we were going to, help him and get him to school and let him learn and have friends just like any other family would want, that I viscerally felt the impact of democracy, because that was all possible.
Right.
Because families like mine that went before me and their champions and legislators, people in government at all levels, teachers, everybody came together and said, my son deserved just the same thing as everybody else did.
Yeah.
And he had the opportunity to experience that because of our democracy.
Yeah.
So knowing that that's possible always gives me energy and hope.
Right. What a great example.
Yeah.
And it's very good Granite goodness. Granite goodness goggles, right? Like I feel the same way.
Yeah.
I feel like everywhere I look, I see amazing people, and the divisions exist, the disagreements exist. Like, I'm not denying that, but I don't think that it's our default state, and that's the lens through which I try to see all things. And it's validating and really heartening to hear, someone who with a different vantage point tell me the same thing. Yeah. That's about all the time we've got, but thank you very much. I would talk to you forever. I'd love to do this again sometime.
Well, I would too. And I'll just say, even if you're an optimist, if you are feeling a little blue or down or frustrated, exercise.
Yes.
Listen to good music.
Yeah.
And I always do a crossword. And
there you go.
Being able to solve a crossword in any given day, that's a good accomplishment.
You can start there.
Yeah.
Senator Hassan, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you.
Hey there, thanks for spending some time with us, and I hope you enjoyed the conversation. You can learn more about today's guest and how to get involved with or support their work in the show notes. If you'd like to suggest a guest for the show or have any story tips for our Good News in New Hampshire newsletter, shoot me a message at hello@granitegoodness.com. Music for this episode was provided by the band Sneaky Miles, who hail from Newmarket, New Hampshire. Until next time, I'm the creator and host of Granite Goodness, Andy DeMeo. Thanks for listening.